My name is Matt Long. I am Global Engagement Program Manager in the College of Engineering, Computing, and Applied Sciences. Very excited that we have our special panelists here tonight. We will get to introducing them very shortly. But in the meantime, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Ms. Yuki Kahara, who is my counterpart in the College of Science. She is Assistant Director for Global Engagement in that college. Yuki, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, you kind of did for me. So yes, my name is Yuki Hara, and I work for the College of Science. And yeah, I'm happy to have you all here. Thank you so much for the panelists to join us. So Matt and I, with help of our amazing team of interns working with us, have been collaborating on the RISE Global Engagement Series this year. And we are really excited that you're here to join us. And so through our speaker series or global engagement series this spring and panel presentation, we'll be exploring themes related to international careers and research, cultural impacts on the practices of science and community engagement, and servant leadership, all within the STEM field. And a bit of housekeeping to start off. So if you're comfortable doing so, please share your video screens as you're doing right now. And as a reminder, today's event is being recorded and will be made available to students for streaming later. And so yeah, please be on the lookout for the details after the event. And I hope and we hope we'll be inspired to return to the panel presentation over this series later because we do have two more events coming up in the spring semester. And also we ask that you use the chat feature to pose any questions that you have to our panelists or to us. And we'll have a discussion after each panelist has the chance to present briefly to the group. So this evening's or today's event is the first in a three-part spring semester series on the global engagement and international activities and how they related to STEM disciplines. So, so now you see the slide. So the theme we are exploring tonight is preparing for graduate school and international careers in STEM, with a special focus on Europe. We'll get to introduce our panelists in a minute, but they were all selected based on extensive experiences, both academic and professional in Europe. All are professors and graduate students in engineering and the sciences, and are excited to share with you tonight. So panelists will present on their international career path, opportunities to engage globally in STEM here at Clemson, and preparing for careers in graduate school in STEM fields. And two future events we have. So the second one will be on March 4th, the same time, 4:45. And then the focus will be the region-wise, it will be Asia, Australia, and the Pacific. And the theme will be cultural impacts on research and the practice of STEM. And the third and the last one for the spring semester will be Latin American, African, and the Middle East. I know it's very broad, but we're gonna try. And the theme will be community engagement and servant leadership. And that will be on April 1st, Thursday at 4:45 p.m. And we will also invite students, alumni, and faculty members or researchers from those regions or related to those regions and themes. All right.
And now before we get to introducing our panelists, I do want to also highlight some additional resources for you. We can talk more about this also toward the end if you have any questions about how to proceed or anything along those lines. But I do just want to point out we have Ms. Johnsy Stansel, who is the cecas advisor, study abroad advisor within the Pam Hendricks Center for Education Abroad. Her contact details are there. My information and Yuki's information are there as well. You're welcome to contact us at any time. Science students can contact Yuki as well for advising. And then finally, Ms. Kate Tollison is here as well. Kate is one of our peer ambassadors who works in CCAS Global Engagement. So CCAS students are welcome to come to her walk-in, drop-in advising hours Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3:30 to 5:30, and her email is there as well. So please feel free to avail yourself of these resources, get in touch with Yuki or me if you have any questions. And again, we're really excited that everybody is here today. So with that, I will go ahead and introduce our panelists. I will stop screen share for just 1 minute. First up tonight, we have Dr. Kevin Tafe. Dr. Tafe is the Harriet and Jerry Dempsey Professor of Industrial Engineering, and he currently is serving as chair of the Industrial Engineering Department here at Clemson. He received his bachelor's and master's of science degrees in industrial engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and his PhD in industrial and systems engineering at University of Florida. His research areas include production and inventory management, transportation and logistics analysis, healthcare systems engineering, and application of optimization and simulation modeling tools. His research has brought him into relations with the Michelin Group, whose North American headquarters you may be aware of is here in Greenville County, or next door in Greenville County rather. And he is also faculty director of our newest STEM relevant study abroad program, which is modeling methods and logistics applications in Clermont-Ferrand, France. This is an interdisciplinary initiative modeled on the Clemson Operational Research Institute. And not coincidentally, Clermont-Ferrand is also the worldwide headquarters of Michelin. So very excited program, an opportunity for our industrial engineering and math students in summer 2022 is what we're looking forward to. Second up, Dr. Łukasz Kazubowski. He is Associate Professor of Genetics and Biochemistry here at Clemson. He grew up in Warsaw, Poland, and he earned a bachelor's and master's degree in pharmaceutical sciences at the Medical University of Warsaw. He moved to the United States to pursue his doctorate at Louisiana State University Medical Center, and he's been at Clemson since 2013 as Clemson University with the goal of elucidating mechanisms of cell division and stress response in Cryptococcus, the bacteria. His laboratory is part of the Clemson Eukaryotic Pathogenesis Innovation Center, which is EPIC for short.
Nice.
I can definitely say that. I don't know if I got the other words right. And his research there is working on microbial pathogens. He considers his work to be his utmost passion, but he also enjoys photography and exploring history and cultures of diverse countries. And then he is also faculty director of the General Microbiology Study Abroad program, which takes students each year to Wrocław in Poland. So we're excited for Dr. Kazubowski as well. And finally, last but not least, very excited for Miss Sarah Sandler. She is a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, where she is currently studying nanotechnology at the famous Cavendish Laboratory in the Department of Physics at University of Cambridge. She received her master's degree in nanoscience and nanotechnology from Cambridge after defending her thesis, which was titled Predicting Events of dCas9 Bound to DNA in Nanopores. Sarah, you can also correct me if I've mispronounced any technical jargon there. Her PhD proposal is investigating nanopore sensors for multiplexed analysis of DNA in clinically relevant samples. Sarah is an alumna of Clemson. She graduated with honors in 2019 with a Bachelor's of Science in Material Science and Engineering. And perhaps most impressively for the nautically inclined, she currently holds the title of Commodore of the Cambridge University Yacht Club and President of the Cambridge University Nanotechnology Society. So we're really excited that Sarah is back to talk about her experiences as well, both as an undergraduate here in cecas and now pursuing her PhD at Cambridge. So thank you again to all our panelists for joining us and helping us to think about how STEM fields intersect with global engagement, how STEM is practiced beyond borders, and particularly how it's practiced in Europe, and then how international topics can help our undergraduate STEM majors to prepare for careers in the sciences and engineering, as well as to prepare for graduate school. And so with that, a lot of talking, but I can turn that over now to Dr. Kevin Tafe, who is going to talk for a little bit, and then we'll go through our panelists from there.
Great. Okay, thanks. Can you all hear me? Good. So I appreciate the introduction, Matt. Yes, my name's Kevin Tafe. And boy, just seeing all those pictures gets me that much more excited for the day when travel will be free and unrestricted again. So many great places to visit. And for me, my connection to France started a long time ago. After getting my master's, I went out into the workforce and was working as a transportation planner / consultant for American Airlines. And as a 24 or 5-year-old was given the opportunity to go to Paris for 6 months and live there and try to train somebody on how to build a simulation model for the airspace around Paris airports. And, you know, what I look back at that moment thinking, I was crazy to be thinking to myself, I don't know, it's a long time. I don't know if it's worth it to me to take 6 months out of my life and go do that. You know, in 30 plus years later, it was the greatest thing I ever did. And it really started this long relationship that I had with people in France, the French culture, and just, you know, you gain such an appreciation for other things beyond what you see in your home country. So that's just my little spiel about, you know, why I feel it's important. But coming back to the relevance towards connections with industry and global careers, and that project was a good example, right? There's a need for cross training and being able to work in another country to you know, on any kind of a modeling type of project like I did. And there's, you know, somebody, you may have an expertise that doesn't exist in that particular location. So you may have that opportunity. And this was, you know, a non-academic related one, but there's a lot of those. And it kind of led to, in a long path towards where I am today with my relationships with Clermont-Ferrand, the local university there, and Michelin. And so without getting into all the details of that, one of the things that we're just super excited about with this program that is so ready to launch, and, you know, we are going to do it in 2022, right? That we feel we're really well positioned to expose students to not only education, but understanding how businesses work by seeing how Michelin, whose North American headquarters are right here in Greenville, works from an American point of view, and then being able to go to Clermont-Ferrand, France, where Michelin's global headquarters are, and being able to work and observe them. So that's part of one of the pieces of this program. While this program is offering a course in industrial engineering and in math, it has this cultural course that talks about business relationships and understanding how people do business differently depending on what their background and culture is. So it speaks a lot to this point, and Michelin is constantly looking for you know, young graduates who have that desire to travel to their other locations and have the ability to converse and do business. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. And I guess that's my short spiel. With now, do we want to talk? Have you know, questions and answers, or what would be next, Matt and Yuki?
Yeah, I think we can. We can maybe we can hold the questions and discussion. We'll maybe we can turn it over to Dr. Kazubowski next. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good. Okay, I was thinking, where should I start? Maybe I can start with kind of to make a point. I will start with how I got a job in Clemson, because at some point of your lives, I mean, it gets to that point that it becomes very important to get a job, and your dream type of job, hopefully. So just one element of that, how I got a job in Clemson. When I gave my job talk, one of the committee members, one of the things that was emphasized to the audience was, guess what? This guy, he actually performed a workshop in India in one of the renowned institutes in India. So, you know, how important that is. I think it is. It is important, clearly, because it is mentioned during the interview by one of the recruiting, the members of the committee, right? So I guess, and I think it is important, that something that we should recognize is that, just very simply speaking, the more international experiences we have, some kind of meaningful or less or more meaningful international experiences we have on that CV, it's just simply better. It's not something meaningless. It's very meaningful, actually, because the world is changing. Science is international. Everything is international. The more international we are from the perspective of our experiences, number of languages we speak, number of people we interacted with, number of places on earth that we had a chance to be and do something meaningful there, the more, the better. Of course, everything is within the limits of possibilities, and cases where someone traveled the entire world, and unless that person's job or future job is being a reporter or something like that, of course, that's unreasonable to expect, you know, someone to just be in every single place on earth. But there is probably this kind of, I would say, a minimum, or perhaps, you know, the number of places that you can potentially be and get some experiences that is just right and enough to be considered as this very strong candidate to a job or PhD program or whatever is your next career stage. So I just wanted to say that I think that the more opportunities we have, and being just more specific here, being a Clemson student, if there is an opportunity to go and do study abroad program, by all means, it should be done. It's incredible experience and very powerful tool or door opener, so to speak, in your future career. So that's something I would like to emphasize. And coming back to this, to the fact that the science is international, and it has been, I think, for many decades now, but becomes now even more so than ever before, just because the issues are also global. Everything is connected. We study climate change in the United States. It has tremendous impact what's happening in Asia or Poland or whatever in the world. We study COVID in United States. It's extremely important what is happening now currently in London and whether people are walking with the tea on the street or not. You know, my point is that so many things science-wise are global now that being present in and being aware of what's happening in the world and interacting with people in different contexts, science-wise, it's extremely helpful and can be extremely helpful to anyone. So that's kind of another kind of general point that I wanted to make. Is just the more such experiences we have, the more doors will be open to us potentially at some point. When and how, we don't know, but we can pretty much be sure that it's going to happen. So yes, so that's kind of what I wanted to say as an introduction, basically.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kazubowski. And we're already jotting down some good questions for this conversation. You've raised some good points there. When we talk about not knowing what doors will open, maybe Sarah's story will be instructive here because, as I said, she has she, as a Clemson student, she studied or did research abroad 3 times, and now she's actually pursuing her graduate degree abroad. So Sarah, we're excited to turn it over to you next. And I'm just getting your slides ready right now, but feel free to start talking and then just tell me when you want me to advance the slides, if that works for you.
Yeah, that works for me. Yeah, I put together some slides because I figured the pictures speak louder than any words I can say, just for my travels over the past few years. Yeah, so I started doing materials science engineering at Clemson. I'm originally from New York, but before I went to Clemson, I had never gone abroad. I had been like, for my family, moving from New York to South Carolina was like me going really far. Everyone in my family was like, why are you going so far away? Like, what are you trying to get away from? And I was like, oh, I just want to get a new experience. And then you could go to the next slide, actually. So this is actually in Cambridge. This is a nice photo. This is a nice photo. So all the photos in that photo I didn't take. The rest of the photos in this presentation I took. So I took this one from, I think, an airplane overlooking the Great Barrier Reef or something. I'm not sure actually exactly where this one was, but the next slide is good. So yeah, kind of the first way I got involved with going abroad was I was in the Honors College at Clemson. And they had sent this email about applying for this global policy program. It was a summer thing. I didn't really know much about it, but I just saw, oh, global policy. I did something with like science policy in high school. So like that would probably be a good thing to round my resume, like get some cool experiences. I didn't even realize it involved going abroad. Like I had just applied, interviewed, and then like people told me like, oh, you go abroad for free for 2 weeks. And I was like, what? I didn't even know. And then I ended up getting into the program after a long, intensive interview process. And then the rest of my friends, so that you could kind of see everyone who was on the program is in the middle picture. So there's 12 of us. We're all saying, oh, like, since they paid for your flight there and they'll pay for your flight back, you can book a different flight. You could stay for longer if you want. Like, and I was like, I don't know. Even 2 weeks is kind of a lot to be in Europe. I'm not sure. And then I was like, you know what? I guess I'll take advantage of it. So then I went and visited a friend in Rome. So that program, we went to Berlin and Paris, and then I stayed an extra 2 weeks. I went to Rome for a week and stayed with a friend from Clemson who was doing a study abroad program there. And then I also went and visited family I had in England for a week that I had never met. My grandpa was originally from Ireland, so I have a lot of family in England, Ireland, and the US. They kind of are all divided between there. But yeah, and I remember sitting on the plane being like, oh, I wish I wasn't even going to Europe right now. I just want to stay at home, keep doing my lifeguarding, like keep hanging out with my friends. I don't want to go to Europe for 4 weeks, but it was a very life-changing experience. You go to the next slide. Because then after that, when I came back, I was like very obsessed with going abroad. And I had been doing research in a lab in Clemson in material science engineering. And my professor said, okay, so like, what are you going to do this summer? You need to do research somewhere, or do you want to apply for REUs? Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'm going to go abroad again. Like, I need to take advantage of this time I have. And through getting some scholarships through the Honors College and just applying for a bunch of different random scholarships, I was able to use my professor's connections too to work in a lab in London. So he kind of said, like, where do you want to go in the world, basically, and I'll find you a connection there. I was like, well, I have family in London. I'm not so sure. I've only been abroad for like 2 weeks before with big group trips. So I kind of want to do something where I know I have family and I'll feel safe. My parents will feel safe. And I was able to get my best friend from Clemson, who is also material science engineering, to come with me. So the two of us lived in an apartment in London for 2 months, I guess it was. So we went into work every day, did stuff in lab. We toured around London. We also took a weekend trip to the Netherlands and a weekend trip to Ireland, which was really fun. And it was also really cool. The research internship was at the Royal Institution of Great Britain, which I also didn't know until I got there. I thought it was just a normal lab, but it turned out it's like one of the oldest institutes in the world. Like Faraday used to work there, and it was very interesting because the building it's in that top picture on the left, had a bunch of different floors. So the first and second floor, which is like ground, and the numbers are also different in Europe, were a museum. And then the third floor was like a lab. So that was where I was working. And then the fourth floor was like a violin store. And then the fifth floor, so you'd like walk around the building, you'd hear like violins being played. You see like little kids. I'd go to my lab, and there was like, I was also on display in one of the labs because it was like an old science lab and then a modern one. So I'd be actually doing research, and like little kids would be like sticking their heads against the glass, which was kind of crazy. But yeah, so that was, after that experience, I was like, okay, now I've done it for 2 months. I want to go even longer. So the next slide. So that brought me to my full semester. So I was like, okay, now I'm going to try doing 6 months abroad. So this isn't Europe, but I figured it'd be good to include anyway. So then through GE3 at Clemson, Global Engineering Exchange, I went to the University of Newcastle in Australia. So what was really awesome about that was, as a out-of-state student, you actually get in-state tuition. So it was also very affordable to go and do for a semester. I got to go scuba diving the Great Barrier Reef, like feed kangaroos. I also did like one of my most life-changing experiences during that trip too, was I went to New Zealand solo. So I really wanted to go, but all my friends I had made in Australia were pretty much Australians. So when it came time for our Easter break, everyone was just going home to celebrate Easter with their family. But I was like, I need to travel more while I'm here. Like, I don't want to see just Australia. So I booked a flight and went by myself, went backpacking in New Zealand for 5 days, and then went bungee jumping. And for me, that was a really life-changing experience too, because I learned that like even traveling alone, you meet so many different people from all over the world, and everyone is really nice, and it's really easy to make friends, especially when you're all kind of international, despite the different cultural barriers. So then I ended up, hanging out with a bunch of people from all over while I was there, and doing a bunch of cool activities for free, because I met friends who like worked at the bungee jumping place and friends who worked at all these other things. So I got discounts and cooler experiences just from like being friendly and taking the risk. Okay, next slide. But yeah, so basically after those trips, I was kind of like, okay, I really like going abroad, so I think maybe I should go for a little bit longer. So then I decided to go to grad school. So originally, right now I'm here at the University of Cambridge for the next 4 years. So I committed to this 1-year master's, and it's a 3-year PhD. So it's a lot shorter and kind of different than the US, which I'll get to in a little bit also. But for me, it was kind of, even when I had came here, I was like, maybe I'll just do the 1-year master's. I think maybe 4 years might be too much. Like even 1 year seems like a lot. And then I had actually accepted like another PhD position in San Diego, like accepted this NSF fellowship. Like I was set to go there and stuff. And I told them, okay, I'm just going to defer for a year, get my master's here, and then I'll come to San Diego and do my PhD. And then within like, I think it's probably like 2 weeks of being here, I was like, no, I'm staying here. I'm not going back. So I guess a little bit now I'll talk about living in the UK and kind of why I think grad school abroad is much better than anywhere else. Actually, can you go back to the other slide? So I'll kind of talk about the different places. So what's really cool about living here is you meet so many different friends from different places. So for example, I live with 2 Germans, and this summer we all, in between our master's and our PhD, we had like a month off. So we decided to, even though it was September when things were still kind of shut down because COVID, we rented a car and then we went and visited their friends and family across Germany. So I got to spend 3 weeks like staying with friends, family. I learned a few German phrases and like just kind of getting that experience. We went to a party once and I think everyone spoke German and then one guy spoke Italian and he didn't speak English. So I like, me and him were trying to communicate. I was trying to speak Italian to him. He was trying to speak English to me. It was just a very like cool experience, even being somewhere where you can't speak the language is still really cool, and you still make good friendships even if you can't speak. I noticed from that trip. And then my brother came and visited last December. So he came for, I think it was just like 2 weeks. And my parents also came. Before my parents came, I wanted to show him more of Europe than just the UK. So we booked a flight and went to Switzerland. We went paragliding. Yeah, it was a $15 flight. Then we took a train up all of Switzerland. And then when we were in Switzerland too, it was like kind of rainy in Geneva. And we were like, oh, like this weather is not that great. And we were there for like 2 more days, and we were like, oh, what should we do? And then we were like, oh, you know what? We could get a $5 bus to Milan tonight. And then we could just book a flight back from Milan for only like $8 more and just not take our other return flight. So then that's what we did. So we just hopped on a bus. We got to go through the mountains in France too, and it was really amazing. And then just this past year too, I also got to go hiking in the Austrian Alps with that same friend who went to London, now is doing grad school in Germany. So I went and visited her and stayed with her for a week at the end of my German road trip. So we got to do some cool hiking, and that was really fun. So great for cheap flights. The next slide. And then Cambridge is obviously really fun too. So I joined the sailing team here. So I'm actually the yacht racing team. So sailing is like smaller boats. They have a very posh yacht racing team. But it's really cool. We have like a big boat, and last year I got to go sailing off the coast, the south coast of England. I'm learning a lot of different skills with that. Now I'm in charge of the club. Somehow I got roped into that, but I'm actually able to get my captain's license to sail yachts for the club for only like 180 pounds. And I was actually just talking to like some other friends from the club earlier today in a Zoom, and they looked up the price of the same equivalent course in the US, and it's $3,000. So what I'm taking for $180 like is $3,000 back home. So that's a pretty good deal. Even if I drop out of my PhD and become a yacht captain. And then other cool things in Cambridge, just like punting, that's a really big thing. So the rivers, you take the oars. So that's me and a few friends for my program punting. I think that was in September or something, when things were a little more open here. It was really fun, really nice weather. And then of course, Cambridge has actually like the Harry Potter vibes that everyone always thinks about. So back last year when the college, so it also has a college system. So within the university, there's 31 different colleges. So as part of your college, you can go and have these formal dinners. So that's the picture in the middle, and they run in my college 3 times a week. It's £9, and it's a 3-course meal that you get like served, including wine too. All the events here always have free wine because everyone is above the drinking age. And then you wear your gowns. So what's really cool is like, I thought maybe you wear your gowns once, just like the first day when you sign the book and become an official member of your college at Cambridge. But you actually wear gowns all the time. Like last year, I think I wore my gown more than like my normal like coat because you just always have these dinners, and then people invite you to other dinners. And then like a typical Friday night would be like going to one of the dinners wearing your gown, and then going to a house party in your gown still, like maybe stashing it away for a little bit, but walking around the street, biking in your gown, you're like, it's like a normal piece of clothing here. And then that's just a picture of me and my friend from Italy. We went for a walk like last month before things got worse here. That's just a picture of us in front of King's College Chapel. So it's really beautiful, really scenic, but it's kind of funny because it's like I walk or bike past it pretty much every day. So to me, it's like, oh, it's just becomes almost normal here. The architecture, it's really beautiful. So also now I'll get to that's the fun stuff about to convince everyone why they should go abroad. But the academics, I think, also speak for themselves in convincing. So for my master's year, it's a little different than the US. It was only 1 year. And another reason that really drew me towards it, besides it being a little bit shorter, was that it is not like as typical as it is in the US. You don't just take classes. It's not a continuation of undergraduate like education at all. So basically we had 8 classes, which were all related to nanotechnology, which was a very specific field, but also very broad at the same time because it's very interdisciplinary. There is no homework, no quizzes, no assignments. There is just one test at the end of the year that counted for, I think, 20% of my master's. And that test, you had options between those 8 classes. You really only had to study about 4 of them. So it was kind of, there was a class on quantum physics, which isn't really my thing. And because it was like this degree here, it was like advanced quantum physics. So it was kind of nice because even though I got to sit in the class and learn about it, I wasn't actually quizzed on knowing it. And it was like the stuff I was really interested in is what I really got to go in depth and study and learn, which I really loved about the program. So I loved those classes. And then I did 2 3-month research rotations and 1 5-month research rotation. So that let me move between all the different departments at Cambridge and then figure out what I really want to do. It also had me meet a bunch of different professors because each rotation had 2 professors assigned to me. So I guess I made a ton of connections, got to meet a bunch of different PhD students in different groups through those rotations. We also had practicals. So we had, I think it's 4 weeks of practicals every morning, where you go for 4 hours, you go to a different department and then you learn to use a different tool. So this was very material science engineering related. So we used TEMs and different things and we got trained on them. So even now that those practicals have come in handy for my PhD, because for one of my side projects, we wanted to take some microscopy images, and the postdoc who I'm working with, he didn't know anyone who could help us take these like complicated images, but I actually did because I did this practical and got to meet someone. So that was really cool. I made a bunch of connections through those. And then it was also, I had an innovation and business course. So we got to work with a different mentor from business in the UK, and then nano integration project, which was using like Arduino boards, and then science communication courses and Friends for Life. So that photo on the right side is in front of Trinity College. And that's me with my 3 friends who I live with, all also from my program. So yeah, 2 of them are from Germany, the same Germans from the road trip, and then one's from Trinidad and Tobago. And they're all doing, like, Felix on the far left is doing quantum physics. Mark, who's next to me, is doing synthetic chemistry. And then Moritz is doing materials engineering now. And I'm basically like bioengineering now. I kind of made a jump more to biophysics. So it's really cool because we all do different areas of nanotechnology. We all have totally different backgrounds, but you make such great friends through the programs here. Okay, next slide. And then I won't go that deep into this, but I figured I should just include a slide on my PhD project too. So I think it's really, really cool because with the PhD, I kind of got to take what I liked learning the best during my master's. And now I'm just studying it basically for 3 years. I don't have to take any more classes. I have a supervisor and some postdocs who I work with. My supervisor checks in on me whenever I reach out to him needing help. Maybe every 3 weeks he sends me an email and is like, everything going okay? But I talk to him more often just to get advice when I'm trying new experiments. But it's really cool, I think, the PhDs here, because like I was just talking to one of my friends the other day and she was saying how like, oh, just wait, you only have 3 more years of school and then you're going to get out and you'll be able to like live your best life like I'm doing now. And I was like, this is my best life. Like, I never want to leave here. Like, it's funny because in like Clemson, I feel like when I was talking about PhDs, everyone's like, it's going to be the worst years of your life. You're going to have to work so hard. You're never going to sleep. No time for fun. But it's like, it really here, it's not like that at all. It's like, I just study I still work really hard. I still sometimes work on the weekends and early at night, but it's like doing things that I really want to do. And if there was ever anything I didn't want to do, I could just speak to my supervisor and I wouldn't have to work on that. So it's cool. So I just get to go in depth, have like unlimited funds to basically like investigate any kind of science that I'm interested in. So yeah, for my PhD, basically what I do is using these small nanopore sensors, which I fabricate using different techniques. I make a little nano-sized hole, and then I have 2 salt reservoirs, and within one of them I put DNA, and the DNA I attach proteins to target different genetic sequences. And then I apply an electric field, so an electrode and ground, to move the DNA through my nanopore. And when the nanopore goes through the hole, as you can see in that picture, it makes a drop in the current. So can you actually go to the next slide? So this photo also kind of shows it. So for example, when I put this protein on that's going to attach to a certain DNA sequence, it makes an additional drop. So it's really cool. What the project I'm working on right now is using it for tuberculosis and HIV. So a big problem with TB is that a lot of people are resistant to certain antibiotics, but they don't know it. And when you're in countries like in Africa and stuff, and Southeast Asia, tuberculosis is a big problem because they don't have the same kind of technology to diagnose it that we have, and the same like money and funds. So this is kind of a project working on that. So I could target specific sequences that relate to different antimicrobial resistance and then diagnose it really quickly. And it's really cool because I could do it for a variety of different things. So now I'm also working on using it to do TB and HIV at the same time, because that could also have a big impact. So kind of part of that too is like the travel grants. So that's the last bullet. So for example, for that, yeah, like I said, I've become very interested in TB and HIV, and I'm also interested in like exploring the global health side of things too. So for this summer, I just reached out to someone at the London School of Medicine and Hygiene and emailed her saying, oh, I'm interested, I'm doing this project. I'm interested in learning more about the different like industrial uses for it, this technology, no one's really looked into it. And then she's like, oh, just come to Zimbabwe for a month and I could introduce you to everyone in all the labs and you can figure out how to make your project more useful. And then there's also this club at Cambridge called the Expedition Society, which like funds people to go on different expeditions. And I really love hiking. It's like, you know what, well, I'm in Africa, maybe I should hike Kilimanjaro. So now I'm able to get kind of this society and the university basically to fund me to go to Zimbabwe and Tanzania for a month. And that's still part of my PhD. Like I'll still get my stipend. I'll still like won't have to pay anything. So I think the other opportunities it brings are really great. And just the world kind of becomes your oyster when you're in this kind of program. So yeah, I love my PhD because it's really cutting edge research. The first Nobel Prize won by 2 women ever was one for CRISPR-Cas9 this year, which was really exciting. I also have an industrial partner. So after my PhD, I'm not really interested in staying in academia, which is kind of why I was also looking towards a shorter PhD. But now I want to stay in it forever. But so I have an industrial partner, Oxford Nanopore Technology. So they send me their different technology and I get to test it out. They also send me samples when I need it or ask questions that we don't have if we don't have expertise about it here. And there's also a ton of entrepreneurship things. So I'm taking an intensive entrepreneurship program while still doing my PhD through the business school here from February to May, where I'll have a project. I'll work with some tech here and learn how to develop it and market it and make it into a company at the end of the program, which will be like a real company, which is pretty cool too. So yeah, I love it here because I think it's has a ton of different opportunities and it's not really just the same day-to-day going to lab. It's like I'm constantly working on a bunch of different things, constantly learning. And yeah, I think that's the last slide.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing. Thank you for that, Sarah. We do have some questions for the panelists. And as I said, we can have a very free ranging conversation here. So please take these wherever you want to go. Yuki, do you want to pose the first questions here and then we can take turns or something like that?
Sure. And I actually had, so the student, one student had to leave and I had her question, but I think it's pretty specific to her maybe future or what she want to do. So I'll probably pause that later. I actually have several questions, but I'll go from something that Kevin mentioned first. So Kevin, you mentioned that companies in a lot of industries looking for younger generation, like, students or graduates who can work with diverse population, who can go abroad or work internationally. And then at the same time, I do hear from students, so yeah, I want to, especially those who may have studied abroad in the past, they're always like looking for opportunities abroad, and then they will come and say like, I want to work abroad. What should I do? So I feel like there's a gap, right? So the industry is looking for people, and then the students want to do something, but then they don't know where to start. And I always think I always tell students, you have to have like this, maybe field or area specific knowledge. So you have to have like, well, if you're an engineer, then you're gonna have the specific skills and knowledge to be able to work as an engineer. But then you want to have that communication skills or that competencies that you learned from going abroad. So you want to have that both skills and present them well. But what do you think? How we can fill the gap, or what would be the good advice for students who say, I want to go abroad, I want to work abroad. What should I do? Sorry, that was a big question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's maybe not such an easy, well-defined answer to that, other than put yourself out there. And, I think every student has to be good at what they do, and continue to do well every semester, and take the required courses so that they get that training in their academic field. But being ready and able to do what goes beyond that. So they have to take things that are unrelated to their major, that keeps them, fresh in a particular language or cultural issue, or something that is probably why they're excited in the first place to consider something beyond their own country. And you're right, it's not like there's this huge discussion board of, here's the hundreds of jobs that are out there for you to just go grab. You do have to, and it's not that different when you're advising students regularly. How do you search a regular job? Even with the Michelin Career Center, which does a great job, if you're looking for something specific, you still have to be doing your own homework, and again, putting yourself out there. So if you're interviewing, then you at least need to know, well, what companies are international. And if you go and make an opportunity with that company who's international, then if it doesn't get brought up to you, you bring it up to them and say, what kind of opportunities are there for me to work for a few years in another country, or do you actually have a program like that, or actual job opportunities right now? And that may not happen at the interview time, but before that, there are ways to dig that up, and maybe you all can help me, educate me a little bit on that too. I'm not exactly sure all the different options there may be for coming up with that information. I hope that's kind of answering your question.
This reminds me of Dr. Kazubowski's point about doors opening, and you kind of put yourself out there, and you don't know what you don't know until you are in the situation where you're actually networking with international colleagues, or like Sarah, leveraging your professors' networks, because your professors want to help students out and have them make these connections. So I'm thinking a little bit about that, and I guess maybe to Dr. Kazubowski and to Sarah, what doors unexpectedly opened for you when you were sort of engaging with these activities and initiatives for the first time?
I guess I could go first. What doors? I feel like everything was kind of an unexpected door that opened, but probably the biggest one, at least recently, has been actually even my PhD. So I kind of, what you were just saying about taking different classes or taking different things. We have a tech elective in material science. And I really was interested in kind of how beer is brewed and stuff like that. And when I was looking at the like courses, I saw there was this industrial microbiology class. But if I wanted to take that industrial microbiology class, I had to take general microbiology first. So I decided to do general microbiology as my technical elective, which material science engineering, that was kind of out there. And then by taking that, I decided like I really loved the bio side of this and kind of making devices to diagnose different diseases, and was actually interested in the microbiology realm. And now I ended up doing that kind of for my PhD and choosing a topic that relates back to that, where I kind of opened up this door just by choosing to take a random class for a different random elective during my undergrad. So that was just one example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, there are many examples probably, but one I can think of is just defining moment when I decide to come to the US to study, which was a big decision for me. And I was not really convinced initially that that this is really what I wanted. It was not like a decision that was instant. My brother was kind of telling me to do so, and I finally gave up and came. And I think that was really a defining moment. Obviously, complete change of environment. So I went the other way around, from Europe to the US, and it was eye-opening, which brings the point that it's not really about one place being necessarily better than the other, but the important point is to change your environment and kind of look outside, and as we all say, outside of the box, literally speaking. Just know different culture, know different people. US is special in some ways too, because it's a melting pot of all sorts of cultures and people from all over, which has amazing impact on you when you interact with all sorts of people from all over the place, right? I mean, Europe is in some ways too like that, and also depending where in Europe. Perhaps there are some places that are more international than others, but in any rate, even if you go to Europe, to a place like Poland, which is not as international as, let's say, London, in the UK, you still get that exposure to something that is quite different, and I think eye-opening experience, and enriching experience for sure. So I think those doors will open for you for sure, and we could see that in Sarah's presentation, which I truly enjoyed. It was amazing. Yeah. I really liked one thing that she mentioned right in the beginning. I liked that sentence. She said people were asking her right in the beginning of that her adventure is like, what are you trying to go away from? I really like that, because this is like one example of some people think that way, which is totally not the right way to think of it. It's the actual opposite. I mean, they are just those other things that take you not away, but take you in like a magnet, just to explore. And certainly Sarah is an example of an explorer. But that brings me to just one more point, is that in her amazing story, we saw so many places she visited and many things like that she experienced. And this is fantastic. But I just want to make a point about this, because there may be some people who may not feel necessarily as excited about like going everywhere and traveling everywhere and seeing the world, which is totally normal and fine, and not everybody is like born traveler, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. I mean, you can go to one place, two places, and that alone will give you like a tremendous impact on your future. And then maybe you become a traveler. You initially think, oh, well, I don't want to see the world. I just want to, let's go to Paris and see what's like. And maybe that may be the start of your world travel adventures, or maybe not, but it will definitely be incredibly useful. I also liked when she mentioned about the friends for life, and this is like this door opening things related, because these are friends for life, with which on its own is amazing, but also very often gives you that chance to really get to know people, to network, you never know how in the future such person may help you, and you may help that person, and how this may lead you to some new opportunities. So I think I really like that. And the more you see, the more people you meet and interact with and collaborate, the more chances you give yourself to have more fulfilling career and interesting life ahead of you, basically.
Right. You know, I'd add something too, because a lot of what I was speaking about was more this connection with industry, finding opportunities through that avenue. And even as we're proposing this study abroad for Clermont-Ferrand, it's more than just the study abroad, that we have a component where there's a relationship that exists between Clemson and the university in Clermont-Ferrand, where we have ways to do graduate student exchanges, short-term times that either a student from their university can come spend with us, or vice versa, and faculty as well. And so those, and I think this has been mentioned by both Lucas and Sarah, that through those kind of academic opportunities further lead towards opportunities regardless of whether they're academic or industry. But it's, you know, we're trying to create opportunity for some kind of furthering of education, and then you'll get that exposure if you're over there working even on a research related project, but there are companies all around that they're working with, and that has a relevance to that work that you're probably doing.
Yeah, something to kind of add to that too, with the door opening, I guess the biggest like door that I didn't expect to open was coming to Cambridge in the first place. Like at Clemson, I was a good student. I did a lot of different things, but I didn't have a 4.0 GPA. I wasn't the best in all my classes. I was never like the smartest. So I never would have thought that I would end up coming to Cambridge, but I ended up just applying anyway because I had wanted to go abroad. So I applied for a bunch of different random fellowships with hope that one of them would stick. And then at first I didn't even get it. I applied for the Gates Fellowship and I got denied. So I was like, okay, I got into Cambridge, but I didn't get the money. So I guess I can't go. And then about a week before graduation, they emailed me and were like, actually, we got you funding. So you're coming, right? So it's kind of like, you never know what opportunities you're going to get unless you just apply for them anyway. And I think it's the same with jobs too. Even if it's a job abroad, I've had other internships in the past too, where I didn't even meet the like minimum qualifications, but there's something maybe that will stick out on your resume that you don't know until like the recruiter or someone reaches out to you. So I think you never know what doors may open, but you might as well knock on them anyway.
Well, to your point, Dr. Kazubowski, that you know, the hiring committee, I'm sure you wouldn't have known this ahead of time, but the hiring committee saw that you had work that you had done in India at a very prestigious university there, and these kinds of things. I mean, I still maintain relationships with many of the students that I've advised over the years, and this constantly comes back to me where they say, you know, I ticked all the right boxes, I did everything right, but when at the end of the day during the interview, they wanted to know more about this research that I did in Japan, or you know, the study abroad data collection that I did in Maldives, or whatever the case may be. So it really is amazing how those things work. I do have a question that I want to pose to the whole group. Dr. Tafe, you mentioned this, I think, first when you talked about different business practices and how business is handled in different countries. And I think Dr. Kazubowski, you talked a little bit about that too. But I'm wondering, just in general, in what ways do you see your colleagues in Europe approaching their work? Are there differences? Are there similarities? We get this idea that you have an expanded worldview when you go abroad and work with people in another place, but what does that really look like in the STEM fields when you're working with colleagues from Europe? maybe a tough question.
Well, I can say something towards that. So it really depends. Certainly, there will be some differences depending which place you go. And I think Sarah already mentioned to us some differences in how the program is structured, whether you take quizzes or not take quizzes, and the overall kind of a way the people approach the problems and how much they spend on those problems and what they focus on. It's somewhat different. And I experienced that coming from Poland to the US, but also I interact with people in the US, which many people you can meet, and you hear comments from people, let's say, who just came from Cambridge or some other place in Europe, and they comment like, oh, it's very different. So it may be that depending which place you go, you will learn that new way. You will learn that slightly different approach. You know, where I remember listening to my colleague who was a postdoc, and he came from Japan, for instance, and he was shocked that in the laboratory people play music. It's like, that's unheard of. How can you play music here in the US? That's distracting. I cannot work. So it was very, different kind of approach, different ways of doing things. And I think depending really where you go, but every experience like this, just one single experience like this, if you experience that there is a difference elsewhere, it immediately kind of gives you that advantage that, depending where you go, there may be those cultural differences, maybe those different approaches, and every single experience like this adds up to your own skill set and the way that you next time can approach it. And there's no right or wrong really, depending on how this fits to this certain context and cultural context and different place. But it's up to you. You can just pick up the best you think there is in each of those different cultures and places that you experience, and build your own skill set that perhaps will be the best suited for you and to you, and will help you to move along. And I think the more you experience and the more you are able to gather along the way, the better your tool set, the more you can search in that toolbox and find something that really will be helpful for you at the given moment. It's like, either working with one single tool and trying to solve all the problems, or grab along the way, learn things and grab tools, different kinds of tools along the way, so that you can be more universal and more effective in whatever you're doing with your life later. So I think it's just those differences are there. Depending which country it is, they are different kinds of differences. But because of that, we should explore it. And one should, I think, take advantage of that.
Well, we're going over an hour now, so I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. Yuki, do you have any other questions before we kind of have final thoughts here?
No, I think it's been wonderful, but I do have one question though, because I think a lot of students are thinking right now. So you tell us, to go abroad, but we can't right now, right? So, but I do think there are things we can do, or the students can do, in this time, in this pandemic, when we cannot travel freely. Do you have any advice to students who love to explore the world, but cannot because of pandemic or for many other reasons?
Yeah, I have some advice. So obviously, as you can tell, I really love traveling, and I'm also very much an extrovert. So being like locked up in my room here in the UK has obviously not been very ideal for me. So instead, I've just put all my energy into like planning trips. So just reaching out, making connections. So like, for example, I was talking about possibly going to Zimbabwe this summer. And that was kind of something where I was just sitting in front of my computer and I was like, I need to go somewhere. What can I do? And just started like brainstorming. So I have a lot of like, I'm kind of also a little bit of a crazy planner, but just coming up with ideas and brainstorming and looking into them that's always the first step to traveling. And eventually the doors have to reopen. and then you'll have the foolproof plan and be the first one on the plane out.
Yeah.
Great advice. So use it as a planning phase.
And if you, for me, this was one of the things that I was preparing the students for last year when we were going to go in 2020, is just sharing a Drive doc page that gave them resources for, how do you better your language skills? It is, so if you have the target place in mind, there are a number of different ways to just explore the language. Some free apps, some ones that pay a nominal subscription for the year, that are often well worth the 20 or 30 bucks. And it's a great way just to get practice, driving in the car or wherever you are.
If I can add a little bit to that is, believe it or not, the great resource are books. It sounds kind of ridiculous because we are all talking about travel, but they are fantastic books of people who are travelers, and they describe to us world that perhaps they describe in a way that we may not even dream of, experiences that way. It's a kind of a complementary thing, but it's extremely nice and helpful to just learn from the books, just read some interesting novels or things that in the spare time we can do. I think we can learn a lot. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that, like Clemson now, of course, I'm involved in that, is organizing the virtual mode of study abroad, which is kind of course, not the same as going to a place. But it, I would say the big chunk of this experience is interacting with people, and that we can do. We all see Sarah now being in London, or not in Cambridge, but so we can interact with people, we can see them, we can hear them, we can hear their stories and exchange information, and those virtual study abroad programs, they give that chance to students. And I think that's something that it's already adding up to that experience, that knowledge that we have. And so I would definitely encourage students to look for those opportunities as well. And I really like, Sarah, your idea of planning, because you learn the world by planning too, because you search internet, you look at things, you learn how they are, and it's already at that stage you're already more knowledgeable about other cultures, and it's cool.
Well, thank you all so much.
Great advice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was wonderful. And do we have any other parting words before we wrap this up? We covered a lot of good territory tonight. So
I just want to say all the best to Sarah for her great adventure with science and exploring the world.
Yeah,
it's truly
a great story
to see.